A former Buffalo, New York police officer who was fired from her job more than a decade ago has just won a lawsuit to reinstate her pension. Cariol Horne says she was terminated after she intervened with a white colleague who tried to choke a black suspect back in 2006. Horne was fired 2 years later, just a few months before she was set to become eligible for her full pension. But just this week, a judge reversed the dismissal and reinstated Horne's pension. He said the city of Buffalo, quote, has recognized the error and has acknowledged the need to undo an injustice from the past. Horne recently spoke with our colleague Jerika Duncan about this decision and why she is still pushing for changes to how police officers operate.
We don't want other officers to go through what I've gone through, but we don't want other victims to go through what George Floyd went through.
And Ms. Horne joins us now, along with her attorney, Intisar Rabb. Thank you both for joining us. Ms. Horne, let me begin with you. You've had a few days now to process the judge's reversal to reinstate your pension. Describe to our audience what this victory means to you.
Well, the victory is bittersweet. I am actually very happy that, I got some justice. But to see the police killings going on still, it's upsetting.
I want to dig deeper into that and how you feel about what you've been seeing with the Derek Chauvin trial and the other things that have been happening in the news. But I want to ask your attorney, this has been a very long battle. This is not the first time that you have been in court arguing in favor of her pension being reinstated. Can you tell me sort of ultimately how you and your partner, Ron Sullivan, were able to get this win and, what the judge said when he overturned the termination?
Sure. So this is a case that started 15 years ago when Cariol acted to save a life. My colleagues and I, Ron Sullivan and Neil Eggleston, we just joined in July of this year. And so Cariol had been through multiple court dates. This was a moment where we joined the case because we thought that we could really advocate for her to find some justice, even when they said it was impossible. The decision relied on two laws, or two bases. One was Cariol's law that Cariol's team and Cariol for Justice got passed in October of 2020 that created a cause of action to file. But we'd actually filed a little bit before Cariol's law was passed, asking the judge, in the interest of justice, to retroactively correct the record from that time, nunc pro tunc, Latin phrase for fix what was wrong in the past.
So, Ms. Horne, last year the mayor signed the duty to intervene law, which you helped push through, and it makes clear that Buffalo police officers have the responsibility to get involved when they think a colleague's actions are inappropriate. What was the significance of getting this law passed? And again, as Anne-Marie pointed out, I mean, we've all seen by now the video of George Floyd, and it wasn't just former police officer Derek Chauvin that was, obviously he was the one with his knee on the neck of George Floyd, but there were other police officers around and watching it happen. Do you think something like this would have had a tangible effect in Minneapolis?
Definitely. I wrote the law in 2016. I just did not know how to get it passed. So that's when the team, the justice team, and the advocates, the protesters, and Terry Watson, who's the founder of Strategies for Justice, that's when he came forward and helped me put it in, write it in a way that it was presentable to give to the council so that they could pass it. So had they, first of all, not fired me in 2008, or even if someone that I had spoken to in the past in 2016 when I wrote it, if they had taken that, then George taken it and pushed it then maybe George Floyd will be here. He would be here today because that law could have been passed here and on a national level by now.
Cariol, sometimes I think when we cover your story, because it's been 20 years since the 2006 incident, people don't have a real clear sense of what you endured and what you did. So can you take us back to 2006, the incident that started this all? You come to the scene, I think it was a domestic violence call, other officers are already there, you walk into the house and there is a suspect being subdued by another police officer, one of your colleagues, who is punching that suspect in the face. Everyone gets outside, including the suspect, and what do you see that you feel the need, you have to intervene? How do you intervene, and what happens after that?
Well, first of all, the mailman flagged an officer down. So it wasn't a call. It was that somebody called 911. An officer was flagged down, and then they barged their way into Neil Mack's house. So we never should have been in the house in the first place. It was an argument between him and his girlfriend that could have probably been settled once they settled down. But outside of the house, that is when he started choking Neil Mack. And that is when I grabbed his arm from around his neck. Now, they came up with this elaborate story about me jumping on the back and like pushing another officer, causing her injury, and things that I didn't do. I mean, when I read the article, I thought, wow, I must have been Superman to be able to do all of that. But now it's really important that officers who are standing by, that they do something, that they intervene. And the reason it's called Cariol's Law and that we push for it to be called Cariol's Law is because we want people to know why it's really important. You know, Neil Mack still lives, and Neil Mack still lives because I intervened. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do everything the same way so that I could make change in this whole world, not just here in Buffalo, New York, because we need a national registry. It doesn't make sense if an officer from here is a bad officer and they go to another city or state. If the law is not in effect there, then it's no good.
Let me also pull back
and,
a
you know,
bit.
to be clear, like the other officers that were on the scene did not back you up. And you can, I thought I heard an interview where you said the officer that you did intervene on, eventually, while you lost your job, that officer was able to keep his job. But right now, he doesn't have his job anymore. Where is he?
Well, first of all, he was promoted, and he choked another officer that was on duty. And this was separate from my incident. And then he went to jail. He went to federal prison and went to jail for exactly what I did. When I said that he was using unnecessary force, that is what he went to jail for. And he does still collect a pension.
Listen, Cariol's Law will hopefully encourage officers to intervene when they see something that is wrong, that is unlawful, that is violating someone's rights. But we know that you can pass a law, but passing a law is very different than changing the culture. Do you think the law is enough? What else needs to be done so that officers feel brave enough to intervene when they see one of their colleagues doing the wrong thing?
Well, I constantly heard the problems, and I wanted to come up with a solution of what will make an officer have to do their job. It shouldn't take a law, just like you just kind of mentioned. It should not take a law for them to do that. But if it is a law and they can be held accountable for that law, then they will be more willing to do it. So there are a lot of good officers who do want to do something, but they consider bad officers because they don't. So Cariol's Law will put them in a position to where they have to do something, and the bad officers can't bully them, but they shouldn't be on the department anyway if they let somebody bully them. So, I mean, it's really important to push this law nationally, globally.
Ms. Rabb, let me ask you about, let me sort of pull back a bit and talk about others who may be seeking to sue cities or municipalities or police departments over perceived injustices. One of the things that you hear often from police officers, from attorneys, is that oftentimes people including George Floyd and Dante Wright and others, find themselves in these situations because, and you hear this over and over and over again, because they refuse to comply. That's a term that I hear so often, and I wonder, I understand complying with the police officer's instructions. I think everybody does. But oftentimes, what if, the question that I guess I would have is, what if a police officer's instructions are unlawful or they're an infringement of my rights? I mean, is the idea such that you should comply with the police officer at all times, no matter what it is that they say or they do, and then seek you out or somebody like you to sue that department or sue that municipality? I mean, is that the way, is that the instructions that we are all supposed to sort of take under advisement and guidance?
Well, unfortunately, I think those are the instructions that a lot of Black families have with their young men because there's something broken in the system. Police officers are there to serve and protect. That's the mantra of every police force or union in most states in this country. They're servants, public servants of the people. So failure to comply is fundamentally not a capital offense. I don't know of any statute, law, police code that makes failure to comply a capital offense. So it should not be that police officers are authorized to take a life, as we saw just this week and last week, for failure to comply in many of the cases that you mentioned. So I think that the right answer is to ensure through every means possible, through legislation like Cariol's law, through advocacy like the type of advocacy that we did when the justice system failed. But ideally, you have a change in the culture, the laws, the norms, and the practices that make it so that you never serve up injustice or improper death sentences without a trial in the first place.
And is it, do you feel, and I guess I'll ask both of you this, and starting with you, Ms. Rabb, do you feel that if Derek Chauvin is convicted in his trial, that will also have an effect on how police officers behave when they are dealing with suspects, or not?
I do think so. I think that Cariol's case can have a precedential value, not in the way that lawyers may typically think of it and as the Supreme Court binding people to follow what this courageous New York judge did in her case. But it set every victory of this type. So Cariol's case and a conviction in the case of Derek Chauvin, I think would send the message that we the people want to send to police officers, to ordinary citizens, that the law can and will be a vehicle of justice.
Yeah, that's what I guess that was also my question, Ms. Horne, is it feels as if what we're seeing in Minneapolis sort of goes hand in hand with Cariol's law.
It definitely goes hand in hand because those officers stood by and did nothing. And George Floyd lost his life, where Neil Mack still lives. And as far as the system being broken, you have to have people like Judge Ward in the system to change that. And as far as the systemic racism, it exists because they created it. So that's what we have to chop down little by little. And then they gaslight us and make us feel like we're delusional when we say something about it. And we're not delusional. The protesters, they say the protesters are an angry mob. No, they're an angry group of people. The mob is the one that is shooting the rubber bullets at them or tear gassing them because they are standing up saying, we don't want to die. So if you're hungry, you eat. If you're thirsty, you drink. If we're saying stop killing us, stop killing us. And if you don't, then what do you expect us to do when you back us into a corner? So we have to chip at this system little by little because it is beyond ridiculous now. I mean, I just sat and cried this morning trying to get myself together for an interview. because a 13-year-old child has lost his life.
Cariol.
Because the police, like, they have to act on something right right that second. Breonna Taylor was in her house. So it's like, what is the rush? And as far as complying, it doesn't matter if you comply. It depends on that officer, what their mentality is.
Cariol Horne.
Well, you know, Cariol, the law passed in your name is sure to go a long way, but clearly, you know, you talk about the 13-year-old. I was going to ask you about Daunte Wright. Clearly, there's still a long way to go, and hopefully we can have you on again, and we can continue to discuss the ways in which we can make public safety and policing better in this country.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
Thank you.